Okay, hey, patch notes just dropped, and this goes live today. I haven't played the game with it yet, but I think that this is legitimately the best balanced patch that we've had so far in Splatoon 3. This could change a lot of things. This could fix a lot of things. This could make a lot of different playstyles viable that have not been so far. We'll get into, all of it here, but like I've been seeing analysts and top players looking at this and like, wait, this might actually make it so that we have to play the game differently now. So let's get into the differences here. There's some stuff for Splatfests. Go Team Nessie. Anyway, they've added some music. Very cool. Let's get to this stuff. So, Splattershot Nova is one of the weakest main weapons in the game, and it might still be, but they recognize that it is very weak, and they're trying to improve it. So they've increased the movement speed while firing, which is really nice. That means that it's going to be effectively paint better, and also that it's just going to be a little bit more mobile while it's trying to move around. Strafe speed can be really impactful on how well the weapon fights. Now, I think still being a really inaccurate 5-shot weapon, it's not going to be great for that, but I mean, little things like this do add up over time. So that's, a step in the right direction at least. Luna Blaster gets a really big radius increase for the 70 damage explosion, for the indirect radius here. No changes to the other radii, but it's not that it's increasing the range of the weapon overall, but like you're going to hit for more damage from further out. So also good for that weapon. I think that the Luna Blasters, personally, I think they are like relatively weak on a fundamental level, unless they were to really change like the movement tech for like reduce the frame data on end lag and stuff drastically. But again, if it's a weaker weapon, they're making it stronger. All a good idea. Big Swig. Vertical Flick is going to do more consistent damage, and it's going to increase not only the distance at which it can one-shot, but also the distance at which it will two-shot. Because having to three-shot with this thing is really, really bad. And so it's making it so that that's not going to happen as often, which is nice. Snipe Rider, damage going from 60 to 68 doesn't seem like a big deal until you think about how many things in this game do 35 damage. So this is going to give it damage combos with a lot of different things. Is this weapon still going to see play? No. But it is significantly better as a main weapon now. And I think that the kit, the next kit that comes out with it might be something to potentially look at. The Sprinkler plus Tacticooler isn't doing it a lot of favors, is part of the problem. Slosher is making it so that you've got a guaranteed two-shot now, that fall-off damage will not decrease in the way that it has, that has caused it to sometimes not two-shot, which is nice for it. That means it's just operating more consistently. The minis are getting a 17% firing duration increase. This is one of the things about the mini that can be a little bit iffy sometimes, that like you don't have charge for very long, so you've got to make what little you have with it count. And now it's going to be increased for a little bit, so that's a really nice buff for those weapons. They've been struggling a little bit in the metagame. They're like kind of close, especially the Zinc, to seeing a good amount of use. You see them occasionally, but we'll see how this goes. This is a nice thing for them to have. It'll improve their painting. It'll improve their combat a little bit. Nice little addition for them. The Dapples get a shortened amount of time before you can act after a dodge roll. So they've 0.06 seconds. I believe that's just one frame. So that's not a huge difference here, but it is something. And like it was just a few frames that they took off of the shooter's end lag that really broke those weapons and made them a part of the metagame at the end of Splatoon 2. So definitely not a bad thing for them to have. I mean, the Dapples definitely need a little bit of a buff. The main weapon is just fundamentally weak in that it has such short range. At close range, it's one of the most deadly weapons in the game. The problem is just that you don't have to let it get at close range. And so being able to have less of a commitment on the dodge rolls is only making it stronger in that niche of if it gets on top of you, you're ultra dead. Splat Dualies got the same buff here, although shortening the amount of time it takes to move. So it seems like rather same 1 frame buff, but rather than coming off the time after the dodge roll, it's coming out of the dodge roll itself. That roll is just faster by 1 frame. So, Reflex, they're making it so the goal here is to make it easier to focus on attacking a single area. They're trying to buff the combat capability of the Reflex. Everybody knows that it paints insanely well, and that part of it doesn't need to be touched, but they're making it the angle narrower depending on the amount of charge. So it seems like the more you charge, the more it's going to narrow down. And so it's going to maintain that ability to paint really well, but now when you're actually trying to fight someone with it, you're going to be more likely to hit those shots because they're going to be a lot more accurate. So that's really nice for it, and I'm excited to see if someone can pull this out. I've been saying that this weapon is only going to be out of the metagame for as long as people cannot use the main weapon to slay. And once they can start doing that, you got to watch out for this thing. It might need to get toned down at that point. So this is a step in that direction. So that's interesting. We'll keep an eye on that one. Angle shooter, they've doubled the radius of the ink splatter. They already did this once, so this is going to look like a burst bomb or something on the ground at this point. Like, that seems like it's going to be really big. Again, I don't know that that's going to make it like super useful, but it's going to paint people's feet now. This is something that will actually like stop people in their tracks at this point, kind of the way that a burst bomb did. So it's not going to do quite as much damage or anything, and it's not going to have quite the same combat utility, but that paint is starting to creep up and be something that means something. Speaking of burst bomb, and this is one of the biggest changes to the patch. This affects a lot of the meta of the game right now. They've got an ink consumption nerf on the burst bomb. It goes from 40% of the ink tank to 45%. With Ink Saver sub, you can make that back up, and it goes back to the same maximum, but the weapon has not been gear dependent at this point. You know, people haven't really been running sub saver as far as I'm aware on this. And so even adding a little bit of gear dependency to get back to that same point is a big deal. Nerfing Burst Bomb is huge. Burst Bomb has been the metagame. It has been on Splash. It has been on Stamper. Those two weapons combined make a lot of chip damage. And the fact that that's been taken down a peg is a big deal. InkVac, they increased the radius of the outer perimeter that you're vacuuming. So this guards you a wider amount. It's harder to get shots in around the InkVac. That's a good thing to be doing. It's a good thing to buff. It's something that I always felt was like just a little bit too narrow for something that's supposed to be as strong defensively as it is. But I still don't know that we're going to keep seeing it. I feel like InkVac, it's a little bit fundamentally flawed in the sense that you can either buff it too much or nerf it too much, but it doesn't feel like there's going to be too happy a medium, or at least it feels really hard to get to that point with the way it's designed. But always a good thing to see a weaker special buffed. And Tacticooler is also buffed. We've got increased setup speed when throwing it, and it also doubles the radius where the players can actually grab a beverage from it. So you don't have to get as close to the Tacticooler. It goes up, it deploys faster. The whole deployment process is more efficient because of this buff, which is super cool. You know, that's one of the weaknesses of the special, that people have to go to it to get it, and now it's a little bit easier to go to it and get it. Reef Slider. They've increased the damage in the outer radius and increased the radius of that area. And the ink splatter's bigger. So it's, as far as I can tell, just a generally bigger explosion that does damage from further away. So it's a little bit harder to get away from. and it might be a little bit more possible now to corner people with it. It's still really dangerous to try and use, but at least now there's more that you have to do to counterplay it. You can't just take one step away and be able to laser someone when they used it. You might have to take, a little bit of time to move back in after the explosion goes off to be able to punish it. Maybe that gives them time to get away or something. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Inkjet. They've basically made it easier to hit damage with the Inkjet, and this one's also really interesting. They've made it so that the boost gets you up higher, so they've increased its mobility. That's something that's been standard since like the beginning of Splatoon 2 as far as I'm aware, and so that might give it more possibilities for getting on top of stuff that it wasn't able to get to before and do some interesting things there. So that like directly contributes to the special's safety, because you can use that from higher up and get further out of range of people if you're able to reach higher ledges. Also gives you better ambush potential because you can get up over higher ledges than you could get before. Ultra Stamp. So they've increased the radius of the repeated attacks dramatically, but 43%. It's going to be a lot harder to just like step to the side and have this thing blow by you. Also because they've improved the turning performance while you're doing this continuous attack. So trying to move sideways to dodge this thing's going to be a lot harder, because not only is the explosion bigger, but it can also just turn and react to where you're moving better. So this might be actually pretty hard to dodge in a straight line. This might be something that like you're not able to just like step aside and then shoot it in the side anymore. Like you might actually need to shoot it in between the hammer swings or something to be able to get away with it now. That makes this a lot more threatening potentially. When doing continuous stamp attacks, the stamp will now be displayed as translucent on the user screen, making it easier for them to see where they're going. So this way it's harder for players around you to dodge around and make it difficult for you to see where they went. Which is a nice little quality of life thing, but also could potentially just make it a better special. So that's also really interesting to watch. I feel like Splatana Wiper at this point is a really, really powerful option, because it was already seeing a lot of use, but with the stamp getting this much of a buff, that's a big deal. And while, it's competing in its niche with Tetra's also got a buff for their special, so it'll have to be seen, which of these specials ends up being more impactful in the end. Okay, Crab Tank. They finally did something meaningful to the Crab Tank. This is a really big deal. This is one of the biggest changes in the patch. One of the biggest changes that has ever happened in Splatoon 3. They've made it so that there's an interval where you can't attack when you're going from the ball form back into attack mode. There's some lag time of 1/3 of a second. So if you have to go ball form, that's a bigger loss, because now it's going to take you longer before you can start shooting again. That's so huge. That's one of the big strengths of the weapon, that you can go from playing defensively to just being right back on the attack as soon as all of the pressure's gone. Well, now it's a little bit more punishing to have to go into that mode. You can eat more time off the special by throwing something at it. Also, they've increased the amount of time it takes to act again after the special ends. This was another thing that was so huge about it, that like a lot of the time you got kills from this special because you were trying to fire an Explo shot and you ran out of time and just ended up throwing a burst bomb anyway. And the burst bomb did basically the same thing. And now all of a sudden you're mobile again. This was a really big advantage that the special had, that unlike a lot of other specials, there just wasn't a lot of lag time at the end, and so just because you got someone out of the special didn't mean that they were vulnerable. It just meant that now they're a really fast-moving short-range shooter, and now you're in a 1v1 with that thing instead of the less mobile Crab Tank. And they've hurt that. It doesn't say by how much, but still, both of these are pretty significant. Both of these will make it so that I think a lot of teams are considering the way that the game works with fewer Crab Tanks in it now. They're considering what other options there are here. It hurt the chip damage combos that the Splash-O-Matic has with the burst bombs. It hurt the Crab Tank and its ability to hold a steady amount of fire out on the map. Splash-O-Matic isn't quite as mandatory on top level comps as it was before. I'm not sure if this is going to mean that it goes out of the meta entirely. I don't think that will be the case. I don't think this is big enough to do that, but I think it'll be a lot easier now to run something other than Crab Tank and be fine doing that. I think this will add a lot of diversity to the game. This does also hurt Stamper a lot. I'm hearing both Kyo and Chara saying that the ink efficiency and the ink management is a really big deal, and that they're not feeling as great about Splatana Stamper anymore as they were. So that's something to keep in mind, although, again, Wiper is nothing but buffed from this patch, so that might just mean that we see people switching to Wiper instead, if they don't end up liking that. It'll be hard to say, well, obviously those are somewhat different weapons, but we'll have to see how things go. Kraken also got exactly the change that I think it needed. They just removed the tower cheese and the clam cheese. So if you get pushed back, by an enemy in tower control when you're on the tower. That was all it needed. I think those are the only changes that you need to make this special totally fine. And they made it so that you'll drop your power clams when you use the special. So you can't just grab a power clam, run to the basket, and have it ready to throw as soon as the Kraken ends, because you're going to drop it as soon as you activate it. And so somebody else is going to have to pick that up and follow you in if that's what you're using to get to the basket safely. That'll really cut down on people attempting to use the cheese strat. It won't cut down on people trying to give jumps, but remember, clam jumps are not an optimal strategy at all. It's not something that I think needs to be dealt with. I think it's something that the players need to adapt to themselves in their own playstyles. There are ways to beat that strategy. Awareness of when the power clam goes up in the air and comes back down is all you really need to be able to stop that and have them score a negligible amount before being able to counter push. I think it's really well balanced. This is all that it needed, and it's still going to be a fairly strong special, but it's not going to be something that people are just using to cheese tower anymore, which is good for everybody involved. These changes are really, really good, not just for the game, because this is really exciting. Now we're looking at this game like, okay, what's good now? We don't know. That's a great state for the game to be in. But also, this is going to improve the public perception of it, because all of the things that people have hated about the special balance so far, Crab is everywhere, everything is splashes, Kraken can just cheese the objective, all of these complaints are gone, or at least reduced. I won't say gone for the sake of Crab Tank. I don't think Crab is necessarily completely out of the meta. We can't say that for sure. But I think double Crab is less mandatory now. I think that we're going to see some other options. We're going to see more creativity, and that is nothing but good for the game. Sub-resistance up also is another thing that's going to impact burst bombs specifically, and also fizzy bombs. We've got another nerf here to the sloshing machine. So all of the meta weapons, the Splash-O-Matic, the Stamper, and the Machine, which I would say are probably the three most popular weapons in competitive play right now, all of those weapons are getting some kind of nerf to some degree. Now you can run just a few gear abilities of sub-resistance up, and it should do more to protect you from chip damage from burst bombs and fizzy bombs. So that's really huge for reducing the effect of the chip damage comps, and of toning all of those strategies down. Opening Gambit, I still don't see anybody running Opening Gambit, but it's something, that brings it up a little bit higher than the absolute rock bottom that it's been before, I guess. And then Carbon Deco has improved points to special. It's not a great painting weapon, so I guess it's fair that it gets a few more Trizukas, although that Trizuka is terrifying. And then we've got nerfs to the Kraken output of the 96 Deco. I know that there were a lot of people who were upset with Kraken, and so this might be in kind of a response to that. I don't know, with the Kraken being nerfed in those objective modes, I don't know that this is super necessary, but I don't know that it's going to be super impactful either. And also, you're going to be able to hear a Kraken coming from further away. I don't think this was a huge problem already, because you could hear it from close enough. If it's going to be able to hit you, then you're going to hear it. So I don't know exactly how much advanced warning you needed about this, but that, again, isn't a nerf to it. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything from the bug fixes that's really that meaningful for the Brella players. So apologies to you guys. There's still no justice for the Brellas, but the changes to the meta weapons, the crab tank being taken down a peg, the nerfs to burst bombs, the nerfs, indirectly to fizzy bomb, that's going to affect a lot of the things that have been really powerful in the meta. And I'm really excited to see what emerges as a result of it. I still don't know if, Ultra Stamp, Inkjet, Reef Slider, Inkvac, that these relatively weak specials are going to be better now, if they're going to be okay, but like these are all of the things that needed buffs. These are all of the specials that have been really struggling to find a niche so far, and they're getting better now. This Tacticooler is going to make it so we see more Tri Nouveau, which is cool. I like the Tri Nouveau. I think it's really neat and really, really exciting. Definitely a patch that I think addressed the most things that needed to be addressed out of any one patch that we've had so far in Splatoon 3. I'm really looking forward to seeing what people start saying, what they start figuring out in their top level teams. I'm excited to see what team comps we start seeing at top level and what new creative things we're able to see out of this game that has felt not as creative for such a long time. And I hope you guys are looking forward to it too. We get to play it tomorrow. Let's see.